2007, I came to seminary to be equipped to go to the nations, particularly India, South Asia. And I met my wife there, so I got something a little better, I guess. Her name is Rachel, and then we have two little girls. We have one from Botswana, Africa, and one from India. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But that's really the start of the story. We were students there. We had a heart for the red dots. We were wanting to go to the nations through a particular mission board, and we wanted to make disciples. And we got a whole lot of great head knowledge on disciple making and Great Commission, and man, we had hearts that were just burning, but we didn't have really a how, and we didn't know who we were. We didn't know how we fit in. It's actually kind of funny. I wrote a paper in seminary that was really critical of David Garrison's book, Church Planting Movements, and I think where I was at, I saw myself. I looked at the Great Commission. I just saw me. I didn't teach them to obey, and I just looked at it and I thought, well, I'm the answer, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll get my degrees and I'll go change the world. And so we graduated and we're actually close to going to South Asia, and God redirected us to Botswana, Africa. And we ended up spending 2 years there, adopting a little girl, and doing the same work. We felt like we were called to be disciple makers. We had a business there as well, and saw some things, but just struggled. Honestly, we didn't have a big framework. We didn't know who we were. And so God had unexpectedly taken us to Botswana, away from a clear path to being missionaries in India, and away from a lot of identity. We had degrees, we had positions at a church, we had jobs, we had people knew us where we were living, and takes us to Botswana, literally a wilderness. It was blazing hot when we arrived, and we didn't have a place to live. We didn't really have any plans. We just were going to adopt this little girl and try to expand the kingdom. And we finally find a home. Just walk in the village, we find a home to rent. And ministry is extremely slow and frustrating, and we're trying to figure out how to get permits so we can live there long enough to adopt our daughter. I couldn't get a work permit, and we were just having issues. And so I was going through the book of Mark. I remember being at our house reading it, and I was in chapter 1, and Jesus first begins his ministry saying, the kingdom of God is at hand, repent and believe the gospel. And then it seems like some guys did that, and so he took them and he began to disciple them. And he tells them in Mark 1:17, he says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And I was reading that, and the Holy Spirit just spoke. There's been very few times in my life when there was just clarity in what he was trying to tell me or ask of me. And he said, Justin, is this good enough for you? Because I was wrestling with my identity. I was really struggling with who I am and what God's called me to do. And he was saying at the core of it, are you willing to submit, joyfully submit to my authority, my lordship, which is the best thing for us? That's the source of our joy. And are you willing to fish for men, to be a disciple maker? And to be honest with you, Steve, I said no at the beginning. I said, no, I need more to who I am than this. This is impossible. I've grown up in America, and we define ourselves by what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And so I need to add something to it. And so he was patient. Mm-hmm. He was patient. He let me try some things that didn't work, even while we were in Botswana. And eventually there was just brokenness. He broke me, and I was able to just embrace and say, yeah, there is nothing that I would rather be in the world than that, and I don't need anything else.
Mm.
And I can be that wherever I'm at,
Yeah.
whatever circumstance I'm in. I can be a follower of Jesus who fishes for men. So
wow,
that time really came to an end around 2014, and God clearly called us back to the Raleigh-Durham area. We had originally thought that we were coming back to be a part of a church plant, and just to labor and make disciples in the city, and still had a heart for the nations, and so lead trips and stuff like that. And I just quickly realized that it was just difficult. We had a lot of struggles just coming off the field, but also a lot of identity stuff. God had gifted me a particular way, and there just didn't seem to be a fit for me. The kind of the traditional positions or job descriptions, if you will, within the local churches here in the States. It just there wasn't anything for me. My vision just kind of kept getting bigger as we learned about the city that we had moved back to. Raleigh is, it's in the South, but it's got 1.4 million people who are far from God, not interested in attending a traditional church service. We need 2,800 churches of 50 people at about $700 million if we do it the way we've been doing it. And the population's changing literally by the day with internationals and people coming down from the north. So just crushing, just breaking my heart, and then seeing what we were doing as a church just wasn't impacting lostness, or it was just really minimally. And so I was at a point where I was really frustrated, just questioning, why am I here? I want to leave. I want to go back to the nations, be the hero missionary. And I had a couple meetings with a mentor of mine, Dr. George Robinson, and he sent us, me and a friend, he sent us to Memphis, and we spent some time with Zach Medlock and Ron Surgeon in a coffee shop. And they really just cast vision of what God was doing there, and drew a little diagram called 4 Fields on a napkin. And it's like a light bulb just went off.
Yeah.
I said, this is what I've been missing. I've been doing pieces of this. And I've seen me as the answer, but I'm not the answer. I'm to be faithful, but it's the disciples that we make that are the answers. And so I took that back. They didn't give us any tools, so we brought it back and started failing forward, as we like to say. And God, it was hard. It was really hard. Rachel and I just started practicing along with a small group of other people. We would hit the harvest. We would go after our oikos. We knocked on every door in our neighborhood. We shared the gospel with the majority of people in our neighborhood. We were able to see some people come to faith and start a church in our neighborhood. But we would also target other communities in the city. And God, by his grace, he really gave us a story that hooked us. Sometimes he does that in the beginning. We haven't had one quite like it since. But we met a couple out in the harvest one day. We were passing out some goodie bags for Christmas, and praying for people, sharing gospel, and connected with this couple and invited them over some weeks later. And they happened to be from Honduras, and they literally moved to Raleigh the same day that we had. And this guy, he figured out pretty early on that so he'd been having a dream for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And there was a guy in it speaking to him, and then he was back in Honduras saying what the guy was telling him. He was speaking it to people back there. Didn't have a clue. I mean, he was far from God, no real church background. His wife was Catholic background. And so he realized that I was the guy in his dream, and just he was sick, just he didn't know what to do. And so he eventually told me.
Physically or sick, worried?
Just scared to death, right? I mean, God was pursuing him. And he he was kind of terrified. So he was like, "What do I do? I should learn about this book that this God reveals himself in." And so we started to dig into the Bible, just walk through creation to restoration. And he ends up getting saved, and his wife gets saved. They get baptized. And after some time, we poured into them for some months, but after some time, they just started laboring alongside us, and since have become some of our best friends in the world. They are training and on our team. We actually were in Honduras in April, and his dream came true. We didn't plan it, but we just looked up at one point, and it was happening. And so they're training churches here in Raleigh and pushing forward in the harvest in the Hispanic community. And so
what are their names?
Miguel and Paula Hernandez. Yeah. So just faithful brother and sister. We're learning from them at this point. I think it really hit home. We did a 4-day, 4 fields training here in Raleigh in August. And we didn't have her plan. Troy was here. Troy Cooper was here helping, and we didn't have her plan, but she wasn't on the schedule. She was attending. And somehow she ended up doing the person of peace tool. And it was about midway through there. We were all just weeping. And she pretty much says that, I'm the person of peace, and she's up there training. And it just, at that point, it's real. You know that you're not in control. You're just playing a role, and it's not all about me. And so that was just an amazing story that's continued to give life to our team and movement here in Raleigh. And I got connected eventually with guys like Jeff Sundell and Troy Cooper, and just had some mentors pouring into me. Dr. Robinson continues to pour in, and just blessed with guys like that who are much further ahead. And that's really the story of how we got started.
Okay. And where have things developed to today?
Yeah, good question. So we started modest. I mean, it was Rachel and I and maybe a few other people that were hitting the harvest, trying to reach our oikos. And I would say after a year, we were training back in our church. It was a small church, 50, 60 people. But we would train people and take people out. And after the year, we had, maybe 10 plus folks who had actually stuck for soil people. We had a lot of people receive the word, but a handful that were baptized and started walking with Jesus, and started getting opportunities to train a few churches. Just again, slow. We had 10 or 15 Discovery Bible studies through the course of that year, and
10 or 15 different groups meeting.
Yeah, through the course of the first year and a half, we did.
And they're people far from God, and you're meeting typically in their homes.
Yes, mostly. Yeah, okay. We had 2 in our neighborhood at one point, and so yeah, we
wait a minute. If you're going to call that slow, I don't know. I think fast might be a bit scary. I talked to an old guy recently called Jeff Sundell. He said it took us 3 months to get in our first home.
Yes, yeah.
6 months for the first new believer.
Right.
And even after 18 months, he said it was still very tentative. But so that's great, 10 to 15 homes.
Yeah, but some lasted longer than others, Steve.
Yeah.
You had some that were just a matter of months, and then they would fall away, and some persevered. And again, there were a handful of really for soil believers that came out of that time. And so that was really the first year and a half for us, just trying to do it, just trying to learn and do and figure out our roles within it. And then as we moved into the next year, we gained a little traction. I think we attended some more trainings in other places, and just we got to witness what was happening in other networks, like down in South Florida and Houston and places like that, and learned from those guys, and really, really clarified our vision as to what I think what God was calling us to do. And so we we started in year 2. We started so we ended up getting a decent number of laborers from our local church.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started a thing called just a church planting residency, or NoPlaceLeft residency. And really just helped kind of solidify who we were pouring into in our team. And so then from there, you just kind of took what happened with Rachel and I and a handful of other people the first year and a half, and it just all grew exponentially. So, entry grew, gospel shares grew, discipleship grew. Churches we're still getting there with church formation and sustaining churches, but everything else grew. Leadership development kind of accelerated, and so I guess that's where we're at. We've got at least our team. We're training in 3 different countries. We've trained in 6 different states. Trained a handful of churches, making some progress here in the Raleigh-Durham area. Again, just everything seems to be increasing, except the kind of the church formation piece. We're really praying and fasting and searching for answers, and trying to learn from other guys who are further ahead in that. So,
but the
that's where
gospel's
we're at.
getting out. People are turning and believing.
Yeah.
You, not with everyone, but you're getting a flow through in discipleship.
Right.
But it's just forming sustainable, reproducing churches is the point of challenge right now.
Yeah, the sustainable piece. We're part of one. I'm actually an elder at the church we're part of. We meet in our house, and there's about 20 to 30 folks, and probably 30 to 40% are from the harvest, new believers from the harvest over the last couple of years. And so there's a lot of contextual issues, obstacles that are in the way that I think we're just now learning some stuff about sustainability. We tried a lot of different things, and majority of them didn't last those first few years. And so we're learning some things with this church, and hoping that in 2018 we can see some more churches that last, and maybe network them together at some point as well.
Yeah, but at each stage, at each point, you're moving into a new stage. There was a point where we weren't in the harvest. Now we're in.
Right. Absolutely.
The gospel's getting out, but we're not getting disciples. Well, we're getting disciples. And it seems to go like a graduated path, and then a wall you hit, and then a step up and a new graduated path.
Right.
And I guess your wall at the moment is sustainable church formation.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Now, what I want to do is just jump back to what God's done in terms of the residency that you talked about. Just unpack that a bit more. Who's the residency for, and what form does it take? How is it shaped?
So at the micro level of residency, it's for catalytic, apostolic type leaders who are wanting to multiply disciples, churches, leaders, both at home and to the ends of the earth. And so it's just a basic format. We meet. Our rhythm is that we meet. They sign up for it, so they have to sign a memorandum of understanding, and they sign up and commit 3 hours to meeting together each week for encouragement, for accountability, for just tightening tools and strategy. And we use 3/3 to pattern to meet, and really take them in the course of 1 year. We take them all the way through the 4 fields, and so they're able to do all of that after year 1. And so we'll meet weekly for 3 hours. They're reading through the New Testament, answering questions on those 5 parts of abiding, entry, gospel, discipleship, and church, and then leadership development. They're committing 2 hours to training. So that is we really, if they connect to a residency and they're not a part of our church, we push them back to their church to train.
Mm-hmm.
So you're God's trainer. You're the one He's raised up to train in that church. But really, any type of training, and then 2 hours in the harvest is what we ask. And these are, with the exception of myself, these have always been lay laborers. So they're either seminary students who are full-time school, full-time job. They're just workers that were Christians and went to a training and got activated to training, or they're from the harvest. We've seen a handful of people from the harvest that have come into these, and so they're all. So that's kind of our minimum ask. They're also doing event trainings with us, and we're asking them to go overseas to South Asia or another spot where they're ahead of us in movement, just to learn and be a part of that. And so that's kind of the basic structure of what we're doing.
Okay. So roughly how much time, you said they're volunteers, so about how much time would they need to commit each week as a minimum?
It's 7 hours. 7 hours a week is what we're asking.
Okay. And if they may already be committed workers in their local church, but if they step out of all those other commitments they're in, 7 hours, including, now you're doing church in the harvest, participating in training church, trying to establish a new church, so you might be in two groups. But that 7 hours as a minimum is, it's a lot of time, but for a committed volunteer, that's doable.
It's doable. And honestly, what happens if the blessing from their local church is key, because they can't be involved in, they can, but they'd be doing something every night, right? If they were in small groups and Wednesday night prayer and all this stuff. And so working with their leadership, we've seen them commit to the 7, most people, and they end up laboring a whole lot more than that.
Yes.
Especially when God gives them some victories and they just, they're in. And so
once you see lives changed, it's very hard, but they're doing that out of the overflow of what they see God doing, not out of the drivenness to rack up the hours.
We've just found that, and I guess in our context, providing some formality, I guess it's not a lot, has just helped. Something to commit to. It's temporary. Ours is 1 year with a second year option, and so they know what they're signing up for. They know what they're getting into, and we've just seen it. We've seen it, I guess, at that level. Really produce some solid laborers, and again, some of those came from the harvest, but we really it's a time for them to kind of confirm their giftings and callings, a safe place for them to do that. It's a time for them to have their character shaped. We're really pushing them with abiding peace as well, so shaping of character, growing in their competency with just strategy and methodology, and I think the secret ingredient to it all is the community of practice that it provides. For me, this was up, Rachel and I. The first one that we led, it was life-giving for us. We had this, all of a sudden we had this defined community where we could celebrate victories. We could weep over difficulties, and there are plenty in the work, and we could talk about strategy, talk about obstacles, hold each other accountable. And so that really seemed to be the kind of the glue that has brought a lot of success to this so far.
And I mean, a committed person might sort of stumble into that sort of pattern,
right?
But what you're doing is let's define this but 7 to 10 hours, or even if it's 12 hours, a committed person can arrange their life around that.
Yes.
But it gives some structure. It means if you've got at least a handful of people, there's now team in this, and it sounds like just about one portion is you will do and practice and be these things with your team members.
Right.
You'll be in the harvest, and you'll also be mobilizing others.
That's right. That's right. And the beautiful thing is that we've seen from that first year. I mean, it was amazing. Miguel and Paula, who I spoke of earlier, they went through it. We had
these are the couple, the guy who was terrified by the dream, no church background.
That's right.
And now he's in the first residency with
he's in it.
Paula. Wow.
That's right. But we live close to a really wonderful seminary, and we had a handful of students that were in our church that went through it.
Okay.
And
is that in partnership with George Robinson?
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
Yep. We've interviewed him.
Yeah. So they're about 25 minutes away. And so the students that were part of it, they were already headed to South Asia, planning to go to South Asia to be full-time missionaries. But they would tell you they weren't. Some had been overseas and had even trained in movements overseas, and come back and just were finding trouble. They were having trouble doing the same thing here that they were doing there. And so the residency, they got connected with us and got plugged in, and they ended up seeing Nepalis come to faith here in Raleigh. They trained. Just trained a whole lot at churches here and other churches, and then another couple that's being mobilized to be sent overseas. They're actually leading our second residency that meets up where the seminary is at, and it's predominantly seminary students. And we've gotten green lights really to run after training and equipping of students for movement up there. So it's just neat to see that. We didn't plan that.
Yeah.
But it just happened because they were part of it, and they were faithful. They were obedient.
What's the name of the seminary?
Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary.
Okay. And if people listening, if they search the podcast list or the blog for Dr. George Robinson, we've sort of talked from the seminary point of view of what it looks like. So
the beauty of it for us, though, is that as we really feel God is moving at that school, and so 2018 is going to be we're gonna focus a lot up there. But what it does, though, is it instead of just mobilizing students or even people coming through churches, there's a lot of good churches here in Raleigh. We're committed to going after movement in our backyard, and the residencies, as we increase them, they just allow us to increase that exponentially. All those fields start increasing. The quantity and quality of the laborers increase. We've already seen it from one year to the next. And our big vision is we'd love to see 300 units coming through Raleigh-Durham in the course of a year. To be either some may stay and some may be mobilized to the nations. And so that's the dream. I'd like to see 30% of those people be from the harvest, and that keep increasing. But and there's obviously, I just got news today that Nick Duffy in Manchester, UK, is launching a residency up in the first one in the UK. Wow.
So there's obviously as you refine what you're doing, that becomes a starting point for others to set up residencies.
Sure.
So it's not just coming through Riley, but other hub churches and if they're good seminaries are following suit.
That's our prayer, and we were one of, I think, 4 churches to pilot it last year. So we weren't the only ones, and we were all kind of working together. There were some guys in Dallas and Tulsa and some other places, and so we were all really learning together through this, and saw the same thing, I think, nationwide. So the second year, I believe there's 20 plus going on right now, and a lot more potential for next year. So
20 plus residencies.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And even if they've got, I don't know, 10 each, that's 200 people.
It is
making this commitment. But it's saying you can sort of sift your calling now in your own backyard, even if you're just come to faith and you make these commitments. This is a wonderful way of both preparing but also helping someone understand, well, what would it look like for me to do this with the rest of my life, and is that my calling? They don't have
it's a
to leave
safe
their job or their home. They can just jump into a residency.
Yeah, it's a safe place to do that. It really helps to clarify that gift, which it did for us. I mean, that was our story, right? I mean, we didn't know where we fit in the Western context, and then getting involved with movements, and now with the residencies, we know our role, whether we're in Raleigh or on the other side of the world. And that was our prayer from when we got back from Botswana, and just didn't see a way forward with some traditional models and structures. We have to be able to have a zero budget mobilization piece here, that where we can pull people in, spend time with them, go after multiplication, go after what we're convicted, what we see in the New Testament, the pattern of Jesus and Paul. And absolutely, it's zero budget. Yeah.